Hey guys, a little heads up. So this episode is going to sound a little strange because the idiot that I am, I figured you could play two microphones at the same time, but I forgot that you need a thing called a mixer in order to make that sound good. So I basically just ended up using one microphone. Well, probably $300 later, I will have that mixer, and hopefully we'll have more interviews like this one here with Rayme. So without further ado, enjoy.
Why come Japan?
Welcome to another edition of Why Come Japan. I'm your host, Mr. Radri, the guy who does a show here in Japan where I talk to creatives. And today on my show, again, is Mr. Rayme Michaels. Oh, hold on. There you are. How are you today, Rayme?
I'm good. How are you today, Radri?
Oh, I'm fine.
Good.
Things are great.
Good.
Things are wonderful.
Awesome.
This is our first face-to-face interview. Maybe you can't really tell because I only have two cameras.
Yeah.
There's this one right here, and then there's Rayme's over there.
That's
where
right.
He's looking right at the other side of the screen.
Right here.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. So Rayme wrote this book, The Kaos Cafe, this year?
Yeah, I wrote it just last year over about a 5-month period between July and December. And then it came out last month in March.
Okay.
Yes. My last book, before this one, Even on Mars, was just a novella, though my longest of my 3 novellas. The final version ended up being about 31,750 words. And this one, The Kaos Cafe, is a full-length novel, over 62,000 words.
Are words really important?
Well, it distinguishes between a novel and a novella. To be a novel, it has to be a minimum 50,000 words. So my first book, Incorrigibility, my second book, Red Love, and my 4th book, Even on Mars, are all novellas because they're under 50,000, though over 7,500. My 3rd book, Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, which you're in the process of reading right now, is over 81,000 words. So it's by far my longest book. My magnum opus, as I called it last time you interviewed me. Yeah.
What is it? There we go. This book, the book appearing next to Rayme's face.
Right, it's semi-autobiographical, so it's partly about me.
Really? Because I read part of it. So in this story, it's about what is it?
The lead character's name is John Hazel.
Okay.
Yeah, I named the character after my best friend in grade 3, and I named the character of the Kaos Cafe, the protagonist, Chris Conley, after a friend I had in junior high school in grade 7 and 8. In fact, in grade 7, we lived in the same building, so in grade 7 we used to walk to school together every morning. Yeah, and one time we had a sleepover, and yeah.
So some of this stuff is based on real people.
Well, I mean, the character itself, Chris Conley, is not based on him. I just got the name from him. John Hazel of Screw the Devil's Daiquiri is for the most part based on me. It's semi-autobiographical.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I should probably shoehorn in some Japan here for, because the show is called Why Come Japan.
Right.
And this was actually a question I really wanted to ask you. I don't think I asked you last time because you're second-time interviewee for this show. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So a lot of your books, they're not really, what is it? They're not really Japan-centric.
No. So far, none of them have had anything to do with Japan. So far.
Yeah.
So far.
Have you ever considered, making a book about Japan?
I have, man, but I need, a story to tell. I'm not just going to write something in Japan just for the sake of writing something in Japan. If I come up with a Tokyo-based story, then yeah, I'll do that. I'm seriously, I want my next book, I'm more than just seriously considering it, to be a book of short stories. And yeah, maybe some or one of the stories will take place in Tokyo. Yeah, but a full-length novel about Tokyo, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it one day, maybe I won't. A full-length novel about that, requires, the beginning, the middle with the arc, the end. I'm not just going to write a whole novel about living in Tokyo without a serious, story that keeps the reader, enthralled. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you haven't really had anything that's, captured you to, write about Japan yet.
Not necessarily.
True?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Right, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Do you ever have, because I sometimes have this problem living in Japan, do you ever have disassociation problems?
In what sense?
like sometimes I have these problems where like I'm living in Japan and sometimes I often forget that I'm living here, and like I disassociate a lot of things with like where I was living in the States, like because I'm an American from Colorado. Everybody should know that from this show, hopefully. And sometimes I would confuse like the U.S. with like little small things. Like for example, I'd go to a movie theater, the lights would go off, you know, I'd watch the movie, and then the lights go back on. I'm like, whoa, I'm in Japan. Like, I don't know. I sometimes have these problems, you know, where I have to disassociate myself with like being in a different country.
Actually, I love living in Tokyo so much that sometimes I have to pinch myself to remind myself or convince myself that it's not a dream.
Do you think that's partially why you write a lot of stories that aren't Japan-centric?
No, I mean, I write books that are not Japan-centric because I spent the vast majority of my life not in Japan. When I came to Japan, I was 32 years old.
Really?
You know, yeah, I was 32 when I got here.
Really?
So I mean, that's the main reason. I mean, mind you, even on Mars doesn't take place anywhere on Earth. Period. You know, that's because I was having fun with a comedy based, you know, sci-fi, a futuristic one takes place on Mars in the 23rd century. It doesn't even take place in this century. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, but my other books, I mean. Yeah, I mean they take place in Western and in North America because that's where I'm from, and I mean that's where, you know, most of my life has been immersed and where I come out, you know, where I come from, and if I'm gonna put it in Japan, I want it to have good reason to be in Japan.
Okay.
I want it to be good reason for the readers to be like, oh, this takes place in Japan because of this. You know that movie with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. Lost in Translation. I honestly didn't like that movie. You know, it's like I still remember the first time I watched it. What was it, like 2003, 2004? I watched. It's like I spent the first 45 minutes waiting for, or like the whole movie, waiting for it to start. I was waiting for it to start, that movie. You know, and
Okay.
I love Bill Murray. And I like Scarlett Johansson too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not their acting. Their acting was fine. I was like, why is this in Japan? You know, okay, they feel like fish out of water, but why Japan? You know what I mean? And I just didn't like the movie. It didn't entertain me. Suddenly it ended abruptly, you know, and I didn't like it. If I'm gonna write a book that takes place in Japan, I want the reader to really feel like they're in Japan for good reason. You know what I mean? And to really, I want to really express, at least it partly, my experience being in Japan. Mm-hmm. I'm not just gonna like create it's like a puzzle where you put a piece where it doesn't belong, like forcing it in. I want the pieces to really fit together. If I'm gonna write a book partly about my experiences in Japan with an actual story that I'm taking artistic liberty with, I want the pieces to work together with an arc, and I want it to be entertaining. I don't just want to write one that takes place in Japan just because I lived in Japan.
Okay. Do you ever feel like have you ever had people tell you like, why don't any of your books take place in Japan? You live here. Everything's great. Has anyone ever told you that?
No one's has told me that so far. But but before I came to Japan, I still remember I was on a date and a girl asked me, you know, if I'd ever consider writing a story about, you know, my time in Japan, or maybe she told me, maybe you will, and I said, yeah, maybe I will. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, after coming to Japan, no one's ever said, why don't any of your books take place in Japan? No one's ever said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has there ever been any books that you've written that have, like, Japan elements? I mean, excluding Even on Mars.
No, I wrote Screw the Devil's Daiquiri in Toronto.
Right. I remember that. I remember that from the last interview.
Yeah, the only two I wrote in Japan have been Even on Mars and now the Chaos Cafe.
Okay. So, I guess here's kind of a boring, standard interview question, but, what motivated you to write Chaos Cafe?
Oh, man. It's just, I was sitting in this cafe, you know, near my place. I was sitting in a cafe, and I started thinking, it was a Chinese cafe with a mainly Chinese menu. I thought to myself, what would it be like to be in a cafe like this, sitting in this exact same spot, where random things happened that shocked me for no reason. Were completely chaotic, but yet mirrored the universe itself, which to me is something chaotic. What would that be like? And that's where I got the idea.
Oh. Well, because you feature one part in the book where you talk about Donald Trump for a little bit.
Yeah, he's arguing with his parents, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's one segment in the book where the main character's arguing with his parents because they like Donald Trump, and the way it's framed is
A president of chaos, right? That's what he is. It seemed to fit in. Right. I mean, what's happening right now? I mean, because there isn't just one form of chaos. Rules like a chaotic universe. It's the matter of a chaotic society, for example.
Okay.
Right. And so I don't just touch on that within that scene where he's debating his parents. It's also a matter. He's a writing teacher and an ESL teacher, and he has a writing class, and there's a unit on poetry, and one of the things he asks the students to do is to write poems or prose. Something creative on chaos and trying to find meaning within a chaotic universe. So it's a matter that permeates the book in that, as the students tell him, there are two types of chaos. I mean, there's the chaos of the universe itself and the chaos of, for example, a society or civilization that is in a complete state of disarray, of tumult, right? And to me, President Trump is a president of chaos. So it made sense to me that the lead character, who's before having gone into the Chaos Cafe, has these parents that he's in conflict with who support a president.
So basically, it just really fit. Is that right?
It fit, big time fit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because you're not an American; you're a Canadian.
I'm
right?
Canadian, all right.
Okay, but the main character. Did you change the characters or the setting of the book so it fit in America, so it'd be more fitting?
No, I didn't. It's not. None of my books take place in Canada.
Why is that?
I mean, the book Red Love could take place in Canada. It might take place in the States. That's not determined. Mm-hmm. That's not determined. Red Love could take place in either. My first book, Incorrigibility, my lead character one of the three lead characters, Matthew Oliphant, refers to being having the most powerful men in the state at his beck and call. It sounded a lot cooler than saying I have all the most powerful men in this province at his beck and call. It sounded a lot cooler to say. Screw the Devil's Daiquiri. I guess it has to take place in the States since he's paying for this. She's a psychologist. Lillian.
Ellen.
In Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, he sees what's his name? Dr. Elwick.
Right.
Lydia Elwick, right? And we find out near the end that he's paying for them. In Canada, you wouldn't pay for them, right? But just it fit in what he's demanding of her at that moment. I won't give it away. It wouldn't work if it was in Canada because it would have been paid for.
Oh, okay.
Right? So just what his demand. Okay, I'll say, did he get his money back? It wouldn't work if it took place in Canada because it would be covered.
Okay.
And I'm in Ontario, would be covered by OHIP on the Ontario Health Insurance Plan. Chaos Cafe, it's self-explanatory as far as I'm concerned that it has to take place in the States because of the conversation he gets in with his parents, the debate he gets in with them, and him saying that pretty much that Trump is turning, and also the media, the different forms of media, extreme left-wing, extreme right-wing media that people listen to have polarized everyone and is partly responsible, in particular tabloid news online, and turning the country into a state of chaos. That kind of rhetoric, that kind of talk, conflict wouldn't work if it took place in Canada. It just would not.
Okay, so you kind of have a big appreciation. Okay, let me ask you this: would you say you have kind of a love for American media, opposed to that's what made the series, or was it just based upon convenience?
You know who the two people are who influenced my writing the most?
Bukowski and
No, not at all. I just started reading Bukowski in March of 2016. No. Kevin Smith and Woody Allen, two Americans. Filmmakers.
Oh, filmmakers, yeah.
Yeah, two American filmmakers, not Canadian filmmakers. And I grew up watching, I'm from Canada. I grew up watching American TV shows, American sitcoms, right? American cartoons, seeing American commercials. Of course, I'm heavily influenced by American media. In Canada, I watched American media much more so than I watched CBC. You know what I mean? I mean,
CBC, that's the Canadian
Broadcasting Corporation,
okay.
is it? Or Commission, whatever it is. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not alone in being a Canadian child brought up on American media. You know, it's just the way Canada's almost completely Americanized, except in its politics, which is British. It's like Canada's a child of both England and the States. And politically, it's British with a parliamentary system. But in terms of entertainment and the way we speak and our dialect, it's American.
Okay, so
also, if any of my books took place in Canada, because that's such a rarity, there would have to be significant reason for it to.
Okay, so it's all based upon the story.
Yeah.
Is really...
Yeah, I had no reason to make any of my books take place, overtly take place in Canada. Even though, as I said, Red Love could take, my second book, could take place anywhere in the world.
I see.
To be honest with you. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you'd ever write a book that doesn't take place in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course I would.
You might share any of them here, or is it a secret?
No, nothing like that. I'm saying, you're asking me if I would, I'm saying yes, I would.
Oh, right.
I would.
Well, no, I mean, do you have any planned or anything?
No, nothing like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Maybe in my book of short stories that I write, probably my next book, I'll make one or two take place in Toronto, where I'm from. I don't know.
Because sometimes I make the mistake of telling people about stories I know or stories I have ideas for, and and it's I never get around to fucking finishing them. So it's I always feel like I should never tell people about what my story is in order for just to finish it.
You write screenplays, right?
Yeah, I mean I've been working on a couple of scripts here and there and movies here and there. Yes.
Do you ever use Movie Magic?
What's Movie Magic?
It's just I'm just wondering if you use it. It's a screenplay software, formats everything for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Right, exactly.
Not...
No. Do you use any screenplay software?
Yeah, sure. Celltex, whatever.
Okay, yeah. I see. Have you ever written a complete screenplay?
A couple, but
cool.
they're all garbage.
It's
I don't want to show anybody that.
See, my first two were garbage. Then my third one was Incorrigibility, which years later, after having pigeonholed it for a few years, decided to turn it into a novella. That's why Incorrigibility is the way it is, in present tense, and the vast majority of it is dialogue, 90% or more dialogue.
Okay.
That's the reason for that.
I see. Okay, so you don't run the same mistake I do, where you come up with an idea for a story, but then you never fully execute it. You don't finish writing the rest of the book.
Well, no, that's not true. There is a book that I did start, and I couldn't figure out how to continue it. So
okay, well, I mean, you're not as shitty as I am, where I tell people stories, but they're unfinished.
No, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, for example, for me, while I'm writing, I don't even like to talk about the book I'm writing until it's done. I don't even like to talk about it until it's complete. Sometimes maybe not even until it's even published. I don't really like to talk about it much.
Right. Yeah, that's smart. I should probably take that advice too. But I don't know. Yeah, that's always something I've always kind of been... I think that good writers do. A lot of good writers, they don't tell people what the next story is they're writing. They just write it.
Right.
And you can just, show people hey, I got this book. Read it.
Listen, if you want to guarantee you finish a book, what you do is you force yourself to sit down every single day. Unless there's some kind of an emergency stopping you to that day. Or something unplanned or whatever, and you just write minimum 1 page of that story every day.
Okay.
It'll eventually get done.
Kind of are you familiar with Stephen King's writing process?
Yeah, no, well, Stephen King, when he writes a book, he does write every day. That's what he says in an interview that I saw. He writes every day. He doesn't let something stop him. And so that's why he's able to fit, and it's he said he writes 6 pages every day. So that in 2 months it's done, and he wrote. It was this thing I read years ago of advice he gives to writers. I think it was 10 points he gives. One of them is take maximum 3 months to write a book. He said after that the characters get stale. That I disagree with. I don't agree with that at all. They don't have to get stale just because you didn't finish the book in 3 months. But the point is from that is it takes a maximum 3 months to finish a book, maximum. He said in the interview it should take 2 months. If he's writing 6 pages every day on Word, whatever it is, then it should take 2 months.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that either. I don't think characters ever get stale.
No, why should they get stale? It's not like they're dying or anything. Jesus Christ, you can make them die, if you want to.
Yeah, because you're the controller of their universe.
You control the whole world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So one interesting thing.
I was
You
gonna
say
say,
something?
like, we were just talking about the time. Like,
Yeah.
Chaos Cafe took me, as I said, almost 5 months to write, but writing on average 4 days of the week.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's and okay. Like, Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, my longest book, took me 4.5 months. Not writing even close to every single day. So I mean, it's really good. I didn't follow such advice or had even heard of such advice at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I wanted to point out about this book, Chaos Cafe, this was edited by guest of the show,
Justin Isis. Yeah.
Or I guess former guest, friend of the show, what do you call that? What does that entail? Can you tell me what the devil is in the details? Or
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it ended up being a proofreading job, which is what I needed him for, because things are so easily missed. For editing, I mean, an editor can completely change the structure. An editor can give a lot of advice outside of just proofreading, like seeing typos and saying, okay, this is mentioned here but not here, so that's confusing.
kind of like continuity in a way.
Right. I mean, he liked the character development a lot, so he didn't even feel the need to give me advice on that. He loved the structure and felt it was very good, so he didn't even feel the need to give me advice on that. So it mainly entailed just proofreading and here and there something that may have been, slightly ambiguous. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which is what I wanted him to do. It was mainly proofreading, because your eyes miss things.
Yeah.
They do. No matter how many times you edit them, you should have a proofreader, aka editor.
Right.
But in my case, even if I told him to write anything he feels that needs to be changed. I told him, if you feel the need to tell me about any structural changes that need to be made, say so. If there's any advice you'd like to give me about anything, say so. But he liked the story so much, it ended up just being necessary for him for the vast majority of it to just do a proofread of it, which is, anyway, what's most important to me. And I knew he'd like the story, He's a close friend of mine. So
okay, so it's not like he edited the structure. It was mostly just a proofreading job.
The structure didn't change at all. He liked it. And the character development too was there. He liked it. What he ended up doing was proofreading it. I mean, that's all. Even though I gave him the green light.
Yeah. Like you put his name like the front cover of it. Like,
Yeah. Why not? It's an idea I got from a Bukowski book. I read. It said, the title by Charles Bukowski, edited by blank. I said, okay, I'll do that for my next book.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's the first time I do that, by the way.
Oh, I see.
Mind you, my first 2 books were self-edited, which is a huge mistake, because I kept finding things like for a whole year after I published them and kept having to republish them, But I'd never do that again anyway. But I learned from it, But then my 3rd book was contracted by Melange Books, a small an indie publishing house in Minnesota, and the CEO was actually the editor, and she edited it, and she didn't feel the need to put her own, toot her own horn and put her name in it. But I mean. Then my 4th one was edited by another friend of mine, and I didn't put his name in it, but the point is that it's only with my first 2 books that I didn't have an editor.
I see.
I self-edited those 2, and it was brutal.
Oh, because I have like my first 2 films, which I haven't released because number 1 because of embarrassment, number 2 because of I don't know. I kind of like tinker with them forever. And a friend of mine, actually former guest of this show, Norman England, another friend, he was telling me that his advice was you should never edit your own shit.
Absolutely. No, you should edit it. Edit it thoroughly before giving it to the editor. Then after he gives it back to you, edit it again, because there will be stuff that he missed.
Oh, I see. So it's always good to have other people edit your stuff.
Yeah, I don't think he's saying to not edit your work at all.
Right.
He's saying don't self-edit and not have anyone else do it. Of course you need to edit, but do both.
Right.
You have to do both. Thoroughly. Yeah.
True. Okay. So this story, The Chaos Cafe, there's a main character who teaches ESL, English as a Second Language.
Right, we were just talking about him. Chris Conley, right.
Chris Connolly. Is this partially autobiographical? Because I know you teach ESL.
I teach ESL.
Do you mind admitting that on the cameras?
Yeah.
Now that the cameras are on?
Yeah, absolutely. I teach English here in Japan, yes.
Okay.
I never taught a writing class. However, as with my lead character, John Hazel of the Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, I did teach philosophy as a TA to undergraduate students while doing my master's degree in philosophy. So I did do that. But I had a lot of fun with making Chris Conley of the Chaos Cafe be a writing teacher as well. As you can see, I had a lot of fun with that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So would you say some of it's... How much would you say if it's autobiographical?
How much of it? I mean, the angst of Chris Conley is autobiographical.
Okay.
Because I mean, Chris Conley is a person who can't, get over the fact, he's plagued by being in a state, in a state of infinite time and space.
Okay.
And it drives him batty. This feeling of nothingness, of insignificance, in this vast universe that keeps expanding, and time that keeps moving forward and forward and forward, knowing that eventually he's going to die one day, and eventually the whole human race will be extinct one day. So he's plagued by the thoughts of meaninglessness and nothingness and nihilism, as with John Hazel of Screw the Devil's Daiquiri. Thoughts that have plagued me since I was 8 years old. And makes me wonder how can life be affirmed? How can any of this have any meaning? Or what does matter? How can we say anything matters? It matters subjectively. Objectively ends up mattering. Ends up being completely meaningless.
Right. I guess this is kind of spoilers for the books. Maybe I'll save it at the end. But I did have a question about the ending of Chaos Cafe. Makes me kind of wonder, what is it that you're trying to say with this book? But if you want to save that till the end, we can. I
mean, look. I don't want to talk about the ending, but I'm not trying to say anything.
This is YouTube. The end. Rayme Chaos Cafe explained.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying. Honestly, I'm not trying to say.
Yeah.
Necessarily anything particular with the ending. It's up to the reader to decide. But I mean, all books need an ending, and I gave it one.
Okay.
Right. I mean, there are things I'm trying to say throughout the book.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have to say, specifically, what am I trying to say by the ending? Well, a better question is, what am I trying to say throughout the book? How do we find meaning in a universe of meaninglessness? In a universe where you eventually die one day. In a universe where your whole species will go extinct one day. Because this, Chris Conley, as with John Hazel, cannot take Kierkegaard's leap of faith. Cannot take the leap of faith. That there is a God, that you will live on forever after death. They cannot do it.
Okay.
They're atheists, and these books are completely atheistic in nature.
So for our audience at home, to explain what Kierkegaard's leap of faith is.
Leap of faith for Kierkegaard, I mean, is like...
Who's Kierkegaard?
Kierkegaard is a Danish philosopher, 19th century philosopher. The founder of modern existentialism. And both Screw the Devil's Daiquiri and the Chaos Cafe are very, very existential, as you well know. But Kierkegaard was a theist, and he could take the leap of faith, and the term leap of faith comes from him. The leap into believing, even though there's no evidence, there's the faith that there is a God, he's eternal, and you have a soul that's eternal and will live on after death. Chris Conley of the Chaos Cafe and John Hazel of Screw the Devil's Daiquiri cannot take the leap of faith. So then if they can't take the leap of faith, and they know they're not going to live on for all eternity after death, how can they find meaning?
Right.
Knowing that their lives amount to nothing. That everything amounts to nothing.
Right.
How can they affirm their lives? How can anything be affirmed? That's the question. And it's the question of that you'll find in atheistic existential writers such as Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. And I was heavily influenced in my undergrad by Sartre's Nausea, and I loved No Exit, which I read during my master's degree, and I loved The Outsider, which I had to read for existentialism by Camus after reading Nausea. That both books really influenced Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, actually. Right. And that's the question. It's an eternal question. And these are questions that have plagued people long before the existence of Sartre and Camus anyway. Right. I mean, they just try to elaborate on these things, Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, something I wanted to ask you. Do you I know Sartre and Camus, they're both playwrights. Was Camus a playwright?
Sartre is a playwright. No Exit, for example, is a play.
Right.
The Flies is a play. The Respectable Prostitute is a play. Yeah. But he also wrote novels. Like Nausea is a novel.
Right.
Yeah. That's not. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if Camus wrote a play. I mean, maybe he did. I just don't know about it.
Right.
The Outsider was a novel.
Do you ever think you would write a play or a movie or music or anything? I guess
what do you mean a movie? I told you I wrote I wrote 3 screenplays.
Oh, that's right.
And then Incorrigibility was the third one that I turned into a novella.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I love Neil Simon. In 2005, I was reading Neil Simon like crazy. When I was a kid, one of the shows I used to love is the Odd Couple. They made a show about it. There was that movie from 1968. Amazing movie, right? Have you seen it?
The Odd Couple
from '68.
What's his name? Walter
Jack Lemmon. And Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon.
Yeah,
I've never seen it. I know of it.
Yeah, amazing movie. And then they made a show about it, a successful show, and I loved that. And in 2005, I was reading a lot of Neil Simon, a lot of his books, and so I get one of my influences is Neil Simon. I love him. So my influences come from all over the place, but that's a good question. Would I ever write a play? I've toyed with the idea.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's in your wheelhouse.
Maybe.
So it's definitely on the roster. Okay, so something I wanted to ask you that seems to be pretty popular nowadays. I guess not just nowadays, it's always been popular. But are you familiar with Death of the Author?
No.
Death of the Author is where it's like when you create something and you make it and you put it out there for like the world to see, like you did with your books. People often say that once you put it out there, the work is no longer yours. It belongs to other people. So in a way, like if somebody wants to interpret your book the way they want to interpret it, that means it fit more into the cultural zeitgeist than it really is yours anymore.
Did you see the movie Finding Forrester?
Finding Forrester, yeah, that's the one with Sean Connery.
Yeah, that's what bugged him, right? And his character in the movie.
I barely remember that.
Yeah, he wrote this book, and I believe it was 1950s, and then and like people kept interpreting for him and for the world what it meant, and he was sick of people interpreting his book to him, and so he stopped writing novels altogether because of that. But I mean, I think it's awesome. I mean, look. Screw the Devil's Daiquiri and the Chaos Cafe in particular are completely open to interpretation, are very multifaceted, and they are open to many different forms of interpretation, and I welcome that. And it's one of the things that can keep books like that alive. All the constant reinterpreting and all the different, layers that people can discuss, both of what's happening and what the character's going through. And both books have a lot of character development. Screw the Devil's Daiquiri has a lot of character development, not just of the protagonist, as with the Chaos Cafe. There's other characters as well, like his best friend, a co-worker, etc. I mentioned like this last time you interviewed me, my friend Chris. I dedicate the Screw the Devil's Daiquiri to him. He let one of his professors at York University read it in 2016. He let him read Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, and he said that it had the best character development of any book he'd read in the past 10 years.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right. You telling me that.
Right. So these two books, Screw the Devil's Daiquiri and the Chaos Cafe, are very different from my other 3 books, the novellas, in that they're heavy on character development.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas the novellas don't really have that much of it. They have a bit.
Okay,
yeah.
So basically, I'm not sure if you quite said this or not. So do you agree with the statement of death of the author, or not really?
I mean, why does that have to be the death of the author if the reinterpreting is keeping his creation alive?
Right.
If he's remaining alive and remembered because of all that, then it's thanks to all that. Then in a way, he's remaining alive through his work, thanks to all the reinterpreting.
Okay.
I mean, plus it's not stopping him from interpreting his own work to people and what this, that, or the other thing within his story meant to him or her.
Right.
So no, I don't think that's the death of the author at all.
Right.
No, there's no reason to think that.
Right. Well, I mean, 'cause sometimes you see famous stories or books where people, they try to interpret it in like this really outrageous way. Like, I mean, not just like, I'm not sure if you ever saw the John Carpenter film, They Live. Have you ever seen that?
No.
That's the one where, like, Rowdy Randy Piper's in it, and he puts on sunglasses, and whenever he puts on sunglasses, he sees all these hidden messages. Like, he goes around, he looks, like, at billboards or advertising, and it's just, like, these alien faces, and it just says, consume, buy, like, death, that sort of thing. It tells you the truth. It's kind of like truth classes, right? And some people have interpreted this, because originally what John Carpenter, the director, he originally interpreted as, or the message he was trying to send it was about Reaganomics back in the Reagan era, and talking about how your government is lying to you. And there was some new, interpretation, where somebody thought that it was about Nazi, I can't remember the exact interpretation, but it was something about like repressed right-wing nationalism or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was very bizarre. And it's just sort of like, and John Carpenter, of course, is like, he went to the internet and he was very angry about this. Like, no, it's about Reaganomics, you know? Like, would you ever worry about that with some of your books? Like, they get misinterpreted, like, you shouldn't read Red Love because it's about anti-feminism or something.
Look, man, a person can say, especially in this day and age where everyone has a voice, something as outrageous and ridiculous as they want to say about any piece of writing. There will always be people out there, more people than just those voices, to counteract them and tell them how ridiculous they sound. So it's something being open for debate just proliferates it. More people will end up wanting to read it and talk about it and discuss it and know about it. So no, how could I be worried about people wanting to discuss a book I wrote? That would be flattering to know that there are people out there discussing my books and increasing their life by bringing attention to them. As they say, all publicity is good publicity.
Right.
I mean that's wonderful. I mean, Nietzsche said in his autobiography, Esse Homo or Ecce Homo, do not take me for something I am not. And so many people have. He knew they would. But I mean, it hasn't, stopped the correct interpretations of him and his work, reasonable ones, thoughtful ones, logical ones, life-affirming ones, to exist, to counteract the ridiculous ones. Everyone has a voice. Everyone has a right to have a voice. Am I going to worry that somebody living somewhere is going to misinterpret my work? I'll drive myself crazy if I worry about that. Everyone has a right to think what they want and say what they want. If they want to put it up online, someone will then counteract it and say why they think they're right or wrong. It's fun.
Right. Okay, so there's something I was looking up here. So we've had conversations before about feminism in a way, and you're not against the idea of feminism, right?
Well, it depends how you interpret feminism. If it means equal work for equal pay, of course I agree with feminism. But I mean, 21st century feminism turned into something absurd. Do I think porn should be illegal? Hell no, I don't think porn should be illegal. Do I think a man is a piece of shit because he jerks off to it? No. I mean, do I think if a man asks a woman up to his home for a cup of coffee, he's a sexist piece of shit? Hell no, I don't think that.
Right.
And do I think if it's a brand of radical feminism that thinks like all men are inherently evil if they're born in a patriarchal society? No, I don't agree with that. I mean, do I think, as I talked to you about last time, that somebody is sexist or bigoted because they're not attracted to every single female on the face of the planet but has sexual preferences? That's ludicrous. Of course I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But the bare bones of feminism, which is what it used to be, of equal pay for equal work, of course I agree with that. And not just between the sexes, between the races as well. I mean, that's as far as I'm going to go, though.
Right.
I'm not going to become a self-hating male because some feminists like, Andrea Dworkin convinced me to. I mean, I took philosophy in my undergrad. I mean, one of my classes in my very first semester was the philosophy of gender and sexuality. I had to study Andrea Dworkin. Unfortunately, no. It's good to know that your enemy's opinion.
Philosopher Simone de Beauvoir.
Oh, I love Beauvoir.
Yeah.
I love Beauvoir. I mean, existentialism. We had to read The Ethics of Ambiguity. That book really touched me. The Ethics of Ambiguity. I love that book. It's nothing to do with feminism. She was a feminist.
Right.
But that book itself has nothing to do with feminism. I love her.
What I wanted to ask is, this was something that came up in my mind, because sometimes I often have these ideas when I'm writing, but maybe I probably shouldn't remind myself of outside influences. I should just focus on the story itself.
Right.
But are you familiar with the something was called the bechdel test?
No.
or the Bechdel test. I'm not sure that's exactly how it's pronounced. They're also known as the Bechdel-Wendell test. And it's according to Wikipedia, I'm looking at it right now. It says a measure of the representation of women in fiction. It asks whether a work features at least two women who talk to each other about something other than a man. The requirement that the two women must be named is sometimes added. About half the films meet this criteria, according to the user-edited database. And this is films. This isn't related to literature, but it did make me think of this once. And I mean, I'm sure you didn't write this, or this is mine, but there's like some certain rules to it. Let me see. Okay, the Bechdel test. It's like the movie, I guess in this case, literary work. The movie has to have at least two women in it, and two, they have to talk to each other, and three, it has to be about something that's besides a man. So I guess that's the Bechdel test. Would you say any of your work passes the Bechdel test?
Two women. Well, in the Chaos Cafe, men and women are debating.
Right, I remember there's the ESL class where they're
It's not ESL, it's a writing class.
Oh, it's a writing class.
That's a writing class, yeah. And yeah, there's a hardcore feminist named Caroline in it. And she's always voicing her opinion. There's one named, I won't give away too much. But yeah, if they permit that in the criteria, because there's men and women debating, then yes. If they don't permit that and it has to be two women talking with no other man in the room, then I'd have to say most likely no. I don't. Two women talking with no man in the room. I don't. Not that I recall. I don't think so.
Okay.
No,
Yeah, I guess supposedly the quote unquote Bechdel test. It was first appeared in the 1985 Alison Bechdel comic strip Dykes to Watch Out For, and a strip called The Rule. Two women who resemble future characters Mo and Ginger discuss a series of film, with one woman explains that she only goes to a movie if it satisfies the following requirements, as I just said. The movie has more than two women in it, they talk to each other, and it's about something that's not a man. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that out there. I guarantee, I was pretty sure you never heard of it before.
As you're gonna find out more and more as you read Screw the Devil's Zachary, Jackie is a very powerful woman. Very I mean, she's downright, malignant and insane, but she's very strong. Same with Victoria Wall. You'll find that out too. They're very strong. But I mean, there's no conversation between them without any man in the room. I don't know why that's a necessity. I don't know why that's a criteria. You know, it's
no. I mean, I think it was only just created because, it's just there's not that much. I don't know. It's very male dominated. The what is it? Basically, like the literary world and maybe the film world as well. Because you don't see that many female authors. Like, there's not many, like, you say, man, that's a great female author. Right, you know? There's very few.
Well, unless you look at the romance genre, then there's a lot.
Like Nora Roberts and all that shit.
But, I mean, even in there's usually a man in the room. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so you could even say that the Bechdel test even fails.
Yeah.
Like the romance novels as well.
Yeah, they need the man. I mean, the author itself needs the man because their readership needs the muscular Adonis as to be the focal point. I mean, that's very telling. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, they need the muscular ripped man. I mean, there's some right turned 19. I was reading a lot of those. Mm-hmm. It did affect me.
Right.
You can see it in Red Love. And like the men debate and they argue and there's no woman in the room at all. And in fact, those books, it's quite often either 50% of a heroine and a hero, or it's male dominated, even when written by women.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the filmmaker Gaspar Noé?
No.
I'm not sure. I think that's how you pronounce his name. French filmmaker, or maybe he's not French. Not sure where he's from, but Gaspar Noé, he makes a lot of these kind of like edgy kind of films. Like he's really kind of I don't know if edgy is the right term, but they kind of really push the boundaries. Like they're really kind of gross. They're really gross. Like, he did one called Irreversible, which the film shot entirely in reverse. But, like, the movie doesn't play in reverse, of course.
Oh.
But, like, the ending plays first.
Like in Memento?
Yeah, kind of like in Memento.
Cool.
But imagine Memento, but the whole entire film is made to make you sick. So, because what it's about is, it's a film about this guy who's, his wife is brutally raped and murdered, and you have to sit there and you watch the rape for like a good 20 minutes, or maybe not even 20 minutes. It's really visceral, you know. It's really in your face. And I remember watching this film not really knowing what to think of it, because I was thinking, well, it is kind of a piece of art. Because think about that, how many movies are made out there just to make you sick? You know, it's if you think about it,
Trauma.
Movies, well, yeah, movies. Trauma's a little different. Trauma's like, that's more B-movie kind of stuff. I would say this is more trying to go for more art. Trauma's just kind of like, it's more like, I'm gonna make a movie because it's fun, you know. But I mean, this one was kind of made into the regard of, because most films, not just, I guess, any film really, or not film, books, anything, music, they're mostly designed, you know, to make you feel some sort of emotion. Like, if you're not getting an emotion out of a book or a movie or song or anything, I would say the film doesn't work very well. Because, you know, you're supposed to make you angry, or it's supposed to make you sad, or it's supposed to make you feel something. And I feel like a movie like Irreversible really does that. Because it's... I think about how many movies do you have like this that are made to make you sick? Anyway, so the point what I'm trying to get to here, talking about Irreversible, is there's one scene in the film where they go to a gay bar, a real gay bar, in Paris called the Rectum, right? And the director, Gaspar Noé, he was accused of being homophobic.
Okay.
And so what he decided to do was, he says, you know what? I'm going to make sure nobody thinks I'm homophobic, so I'm going to shoot myself masturbating in a gay bar to make sure nobody thinks that I'm homophobic.
That'll do the trick.
Yeah. So what I was thinking was, do you think you'd ever make yourself write a story based upon, like, somebody saying, nah, like, there's me saying, like, there's not enough women, and, but, like, or could you think we could make a story where there's only a women in it, you know? Like, that kind of, like, totally...
Well, I'd write
defeats the bechdel, or passes the bechdel test.
Oh, I'd write a book where the main characters are women. Of course, I would.
Right.
Absolutely, I would.
Right.
I've toyed with that thought many times.
Well, I'm not just saying women. I'm saying, like, in terms of, like, a challenge. Like, do you often kind of give yourself challenges? Like, now I'm going to write a book like this because the internet or the world kind of says this, quote unquote. If that makes any sense.
I wouldn't write a book for that reason, not to appease the status quo, not even to antagonize the status quo. If I write something, it has to be like a dam bursting. It has to be written.
Okay.
It has to come out.
Right.
Yeah. But in terms of women being lead characters, I mean, I'm all for it.
Right.
I mean, the more entertaining and enthralling it is, the more nitty gritty it is. Mm-hmm. You know, the more meaty it is. You know, the more I like it. I mean, the more it offers something to the reader. Mm-hmm. Or in the case of the movies, the viewer. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that answers, I guess, my question there. So, all right, Rayme, that's all I got. That's all the questions I've had for you about the book. Anything else you want to share about Chaos Cafe, or questions you have about this one, Red Love, or Screw Devil's Daiquiri? Or actually, I do have a question about Screw Devil's Daiquiri, because I started reading some of it. This is the other book on Mars I'm sharing right here, right now, which I interviewed him. The links will be below, and you can listen to that old interview if you want to listen to it. What is it? Screw the Devil's Daiquiri. I started reading this book, and this was more of a how would I say? What's the motivation? Another boring interview question. What's the motivation for writing Screw the Devil's Daiquiri?
Screw the Devil's Daiquiri was a build-up that took place throughout my entire life. I mean, it's so personal to me, the book. It's my magnum opus, not just because it's so long, over 81,000 words in my longest book, but because of how semi-autobiographical it is. In fact, it's more like 1/10 autobiographical, but we don't talk that way. We just say semi-autobiographical. It's about a lot of it has to do with the turmoil, angst, and internal and psychological problems the lead character has, much of which stemming from his father, and you'll get to that. So it's also philosophical and existential as well, and it's multifaceted both in terms of the narration and the character development, and I really enjoyed writing. It was like a dam bursting, writing it. I don't want to give away too much, but it's also a bit of a crime caper as well. You'll get to that. So it's a dark urban comedy meets
multifaceted.
Right. It's a dark urban comedy meets psychological drama.
Okay.
It's also.
I guess I should ask you this. Okay, this is the main question. So when you told me to read The Chaos Cafe, this book. You told me to read this book, Chaos Cafe. For our audio listeners, I have a bunch of pictures of the books listed here. So if anybody wants to know what I'm saying when I go, the one pictured here. Anyway, so you said that this was a good companion piece to The Chaos Cafe.
Yeah,
why would you say that?
Okay, because they're both existential and they're both self-reflective, especially Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, because it's semi-autobiographical, and it's because it deals with a lot of the angst and inner struggles and upbringing of the lead character. It's very self-reflective. Chaos Cafe is self-reflective as well, not necessarily though because of the upbringing of the character though, because of the things he struggled with, as I talked about before, being this, sentient being that's so insignificant in a universe of, infinite time and space. And the lead character, John Hazel of Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, struggles with the same things, but on top of that, it has to do with his own struggles about him, himself and how he is towards others as well. Sometimes he feels like this lingering deadness between himself and others, John Hazel, So, when I wrote Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, as I told Stu Taylor, I was trying to understand myself. Better get an idea as to what was going on with, inside me. Because when I started writing Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, life felt dead to me, And in writing it, Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, I overcame myself, and it brought me back to life. In the same way that, writing Human All Too Human revitalized, and healed Nietzsche in many ways. Nietzsche, my favorite philosopher.
Right. Real quick. So probably you should explain to the audience, who is Stu Taylor? Stu Taylor, right?
Okay, Stu Taylor interviewed me in September of 2015. You can find the interview on my YouTube channel.
Yes.
So yeah, it was like a 10-minute interview, and his show's broadcast out of Maine, USA. Anyways,
does he always interview authors all the time?
He approached me. Yeah, he interviews authors. Yeah.
Oh, okay. What kind of show is it?
I don't know what he usually does on his show. I know the show he did with me and a show he did with another author as well.
Oh, okay.
That's all I know. Yeah, but it's syndicated across the U.S.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess my main question here is, or what I got from what you just said is, Screw the Devil's Daiquiri and Chaos Cafe are similar because
they're self-reflective. Right, especially Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, reflective in terms of what I've gone through in life, my upbringing, that being raised on television and movies, and also the very existential, both books, it's characters trying to come to terms with the fact that everything amounts to nothing basically. How can they then affirm life?
Yeah.
It's very puzzling. It's something that other, philosophers have tried to find the solution to. Nietzsche with his eternal return, Kierkegaard with his leap of faith, etc., etc. The question is, should everything just amount to nihilism? It often does. But should it? Can you really affirm this life? Can you make yourself matter in some way? Well, how can you if you're going to cease to exist one day and be forgotten along with your whole species?
What's the one you just said about Nietzsche? What did he have?
He had the eternal return.
Eternal return.
Also known as the eternal recurrence, where it's an existential idea.
Okay.
Of everything happening again and again and again, this exact same way for all eternity.
Okay.
It's an existential problem or idea he posits in both Thus Spoke Zarathustra, his novel, which he subtitles A Novel for Everyone and No One, and also in The Gay Science.
Okay.
A great book published in 1882, Section 5 published in 1886. If everything is going to happen again, time and time again for all eternity, then can you create a life that you would want to live for all eternity over and over and over again? As he says in The Gay Science, if a demon came to you one night and he offered you to live your entire life over and over and over again for all eternity, would you say yes? Nietzsche's saying, create a life that is so life-affirming, a life that you're so proud of, and so self-cultivated and affirmed through that you would want to live it through all eternity, for all eternity over and over and over again, and therefore would tell the demon, yes, I want that. So because Nietzsche was all about life affirmation, trying to find meaning, in a world where you die, where you cease to exist, where everyone you love ceases to exist. And the Will to Power notes, Nietzsche's Will to Power notes, published posthumously. Nietzsche, in one of the notes, says that if time is eternal, if there's no beginning to time and there's no end to time, then it can't really be seen as a straight line, because a line has a beginning, a line has an end.
Right.
So then, what doesn't have a beginning and an end?
A loop.
A ring, that's right.
Right.
A ring. So Nietzsche played with the idea. Maybe it is a fact. Maybe it is. Basically, was the point of the note. And if time is works concomitantly, like works with space, then they are a loop that happen over and over again. The time and events do happen over and over and over again. If you were to put it in modern terms, the Big Crunch causes the Big Bang. Do I think that's the case? Unlikely. But within that context, within that idea, the Big Crunch would cause it. And then for Nietzsche, can you create a life that's so magnificent that you would want it to exist over and over and over again for all eternity?
Right.
Now, and also, a theme in Screw the Devil's Daiquiri in the Chaos Cafe is death, and the fact that the characters, have to die one day. And they like everyone dies one day, and they die. That drives them batty that their lives are so short, and then in a universe that exists for trillions and upon trillions and trillions of years. Kierkegaard, I told you, he was the founding father of modern existentialism, right? In 1843, he published 3 books, his most important books. He wrote a lot more than 3 books, but his most important 3 books published on the exact same day in 1843.
Okay.
Either or. Sickness unto death, and fear and trembling. In the beginning of Either or, he posits a riddle.
Okay.
He says in England, there's a cemetery, and in that cemetery there's a grave, and in that graveyard, I should say, there's a grave with a tombstone that says the unhappiest one. And he says they dug and they dug and they dug to find out who the unhappiest one was. Since it offered no other piece of information on the tombstone, no name, no birthday, no death date, just the unhappiest one. Right? So they wanted to know who this person was, and they dug and they dug and they dug, and they found no one. So then, the question of this riddle is, why is the person to whom this tombstone belongs to the unhappiest one? Why are they the unhappiest one? Why? Because they never die. No grave will keep them. They live on and on and on for all eternity, watching everyone they've come to love and know die time and time again. All their past regrets and remorse.
Right.
Festering in their minds. Year after year, decade after decade, century after century, millennia after millennia, with no relief, with compound interest, without any repose. So for Kierkegaard, death is a gift. It puts to rest all the pain. all the suffering, all the remorse of having lost everyone over and over and over again. It allows you to finally forget all your past mistakes. So, for Kierkegaard, even for someone who can't take the leap of faith into eternity of God and heaven, there's still at least the relief and release of all that pain and suffering that you get when dying. That you could finally just be at peace. Yeah.
So kind of like it's the end of your loop, in a way.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, well, one thing I found that was kind of interesting about Chaos Cafe is, now that you're telling me about that, it's kind of based upon this whole Nietzschean philosophy about loops. Is that right?
It's not based on that. No. It's not based. The Chaos Cafe is not based on that.
Okay.
It's simply not. I was just saying that, each of them have tried to solve the problem in their own way. My characters, in Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, there's John Hazel, and in the Chaos Cafe there's Chris Conley. And even on Mars Dawn Power, he struggles with immortality and how quickly time goes by and eventually he dies. I mean, they struggle in their own way. Everyone has their own struggle, to go through to try to find a solution for. Each person has to come to their own answer. I mean, Eric Fromm in To Have or To Be, I quote him in the beginning of the Chaos Cafe. With that quote in the beginning of Eric Fromm's, it comes from actually The Art of Loving. Because that puts you in the mindset of Chris Conley, who's very disillusioned by life. His solution is, you have to be, but not feel the need to have your life. You have to accept the fact that you have to let it go one day. That too. Let go of things. Let go of your life itself. Otherwise, there's no solution to the problem. Don't need to have to exist for all eternity. So basically, all philosophers who struggled with the problem tried to posit their own solution and own answer. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I'll just say it anyway. Because the Chaos Cafe in the story, it's about how the cafe itself is kind of like the nexus,
right,
of how it's
the multiverse.
The multiverse. Now, you see a lot of multiverse stuff in superhero films recently. Have you? Yeah.
Really?
Why you make that face?
Well,
yeah.
No, I don't. I didn't know that was the case.
What is it? The Flash has a multiverse theory, and then there's also the new Legion TV show has.
I haven't seen that.
Legion has a multiverse theory. Not a theory. It happens.
Right.
It talks about parallel realities and situations.
Remember the show Sliders?
No. What's that?
Okay. Well, Sliders is the show that came out in 94, 95 with that I forget his name, the actor who was in the show My Secret Identity.
Okay.
I think it was a Canadian show, and then they made it big in the States.
All right.
Okay. Well, anyway, Sliders is about a boy in his basement who's this brilliant scientist, and he creates a portal to other universes.
Okay.
So the idea of I think parallel universes began, playing in my mind when I was 13 because of that show. The show didn't last long. I mean, it wasn't that. I liked the first season a lot, but after that, kind of a downhill slide.
Right.
Maybe even the first season was good to me only because I was 13.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's also what is it? Even this show, what is it? I have it right here. Twin Peaks. They can't even go into it's just on plastic. We'll probably watch it one of these days. I've seen it.
Yeah. I loved that show when I was 9. I was glued to the TV when that show would come on.
This is the new season.
New season of Twin Peaks? I didn't know there was one.
Yeah, the new one.
Is it about Robert? What's her name? Palmer?
Laura Palmer. Briefly, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure if there's a spoiler, but they have a moment of where there's a multiverse kind of.
I didn't understand at the end of Twin Peaks why he smashes his face into the mirror. You know what the scene I'm talking about at the end?
Yeah, Bob. Right?
Yeah, he smashes and he's a different person, right?
Right.
I was like, this doesn't give me the answer.
No, it doesn't give you the answer. Well, David Lynch doesn't like giving you answers for movies.
So we don't know who killed Laura Palmer?
No, they find out.
They do find out, right?
Yeah, spoilers. It's her dad.
I don't remember. I was 9 years old. It was a long time ago. Her dad killed her, right?
Spoilers for a show that's 25 years old.
More than that now. Christ.
Yeah.
We're talking 29 years, right? Came out in 1990, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
1991, 92.
I think 1991.
Yeah, because it seems like multiverses. It seems like that's a real popular thing in the media right now. And well, actually, let me ask you this about one last thing about the Chaos Cafe before we break for today. What is your fascination with chaos? Like, and do you think chaos kind of puts order into this world?
No. Well, I mean, order can come from chaos, but it's the order we give it, you know. And also, it depends how you define order. I mean, I touch on these things in the book. I mean, there's the orders of the law of the universe, right? But they themselves, as I even say in Red Love, are a product of that chaos. I mean, it's the chaos itself also that bothers the lead character, you know, Chris Conley, you know, and because I mean if he's living in a state of complete chaos in this universe, and he really gets into the nitty gritty with Candace Illin, you know, on their date, you know, one of his students is psychologist or psychiatrist, is that you know the universe is chaotic because it's meaningless. You know, it's not just nothing is happening for any intrinsic meaning. It's just happening all over the place without meaning. So if the universe itself is without meaning and all these events are happening without meaning, how can he then make objective meaning? You know, it drives him crazy too. That's a part of it. You know, it's all these things happening at random for no intrinsic reason, caused by nobody because he's an atheist. Oh me. So why should he believe for 1 second that he himself can create? You know, any kind of meaning, can find an objective meaning, a meaningful meaning, real meaning, that you know, that it can exist like beyond his own life. It makes him feel so small, makes him feel even more so than he's nothing. He already feels like he's nothing because the universe is infinite and time is infinite. They go on and on and on, and his life is so short. But on top of that, everything is happening for no reason, including his own life. So it just like drills deeper into him at the very core of him that he himself is nothing. He has no meaning and no intrinsic purpose. Well, then how can he make a purpose that's meaningful? You know, so that's his struggle. You know, I mean, John Hazel too in Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, but it's explained much more in detail, I think, in the Chaos Cafe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Rayme, that's about all the questions I have for today. Is there anything else you would like to say before we go?
Bernie Sanders for 2020. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, as long as the DNC doesn't screw him over like it did in 2016 and all of America. I mean, if they put another establishment candidate in there like Hillary Clinton, Trump will win again. That's all I'm gonna say. You know, to end it. You know, and if they read the book, they'll know why I'm talking about that. But.
Wait a minute. You're not even American. You can't vote.
This matters. I know I can't vote. Did I say? I mean, I'm saying, but it's important to me. It's important to Canadians. America borders Canada.
It's important for me.
It's important for everyone in the world. It's the most powerful country in the world. The president is the most powerful man or woman in the world, depending on who they are. It's important to everyone. I mean, American culture is the most influential culture in the history of the human race.
You think so?
Yeah, I know so.
What's the second most popular?
Who the hell knows? The second most popular?
I don't know.
Nah, what, like the Roman or Greek empires? Guys, I don't know. But I mean, it's significant to everyone, and I care about Americans.
Right.
You know, I want the America to join the developed world and having Medicare for all. You know, I want them to have, you know, all these wonderful things that progressives want them to have. I want less foreign intervention, you know, as well. That matters big time. I mean, that's not something that it's only going to matter to Americans, less foreign intervention, you know, less war. You know, I mean, plus if I heard that, you know, Americans got to have free university and college tuition, I'd be like, Christ, maybe Canada will also have that one day. I'd be happy for my fellow Canadians. You know, I don't want them to leave school and all the debt, you know, that I left school in. You know, even though we pay way less in tuition than Americans do because of a lot of our tax dollars do go to keeping our tuition costs down. Right. It's still a lot of money, you know, to be left with. If you don't, unless your parents pay for it all because you come from money. So yeah, I mean, it's very naive to say, and you know, the president only matters to Americans. No way. A country like that, such an influential, powerful country, and particularly one that happens to border my country. No. I mean, it is important to me. Very much so. I mean, I don't want the chaos of Donald Trump. I do not want that at all for another for another term. I absolutely do not. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining yourself in that regard.
All right.
And, all right, next week on our show is, or actually tomorrow, because I'm going on a trip to Portland to see my friends
Cool.
and family. Tomorrow is Busan Kevin, a.k.a. Just Japan Podcast. Be sure to tune in tomorrow to see that live stream. So until then, I'm Radri, and
Rayme Michaels, thanks for having me, Radley. I really appreciate it. More than you could ever know.
yeah, go buy his books. It's in the link below.
Yeah.
You can see them down there.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys.